and non-medical devices. We are fortunate to have Mr. Abdul Rahman Siddiqui from TUE Rhineland, who will walk us through the process of EMI EMC testing and certification. Before I introduce him to you, I will brief about SIGN to our audience. Most of you might be aware as well. SIGN is a technology business incubator under the umbrella of IIT Bombay. Since its inception, SIGN's focus is always on technology-based startups. SIGN supports startups at various stages like pre-incubation, incubation, and accelerator as well, growth stage. SIGN support includes infrastructure like office space and labs, networking, and visibility to the ecosystem, mentorship, legal, IP, and corporate connections, and funding as well. For pre-incubation stage, SIGN offers various government grants like EIR, Entrepreneur in Residence, and then prototyping grants. At incubation stage, SIGN provides seed funding support, and for growth stage, SIGN runs the programs like Accelerator. SIGN also executes focus-based programs like Biotechnology Ignition Grants, BIG, which is from BIRAC. This grant is specifically for healthcare domain. Also, SIGN is one of the partner for defense-related startups. That's IDEX, Innovation for Defense Excellence. And but even though these are the focus-based programs, SIGN is a sector-agnostic incubator, and it caters to various domains. Till now, SIGN has incubated around more than 180 plus startups and supported more than 550 entrepreneurs in their entrepreneurship or startup journey. We do understand that the startups face challenges during their testing and certification stage. So we have invited expert from TUE Rhineland to guide our innovators. So TUE Rhineland is they provide all services related to testing, inspection, and certification. Mr. Abdul is associated with Rhineland as a senior product manager. He has more than 16 years of experience in product testing and certification with regards to EMI and EMC, that is electromagnetic interference and electromagnetic compatibility. He is a certified internal auditor for ISO IEC 17025 from CET Bangalore. He is also responsible for setting up of EMI and EMC laboratories in India. With this brief introduction, I'll hand over the session now to Mr. Abdul Rahman and request him to guide and share his experience and expertise with our startups. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, Ms. Rasmi. Thanks for inviting me as a speaker for today's sessions. And I'd like to thank SIGN as well. It is great initiative by SIGN, who's working with startups and supporting them to bring up the technology in India. And thanks for my introduction as well. So let me not take much of my time. Let me present my slides very quickly. Let me know once you are able to see the slides as well.
Yes, sir, we are able to see the slides.
Good evening, everyone. This is Abdul Rahman. As Rashmi has already introduced me to you all, so I'll just keep it very brisk. So today's session is regarding EMI/EMC testing and certification for medical and non-medical products. So my introduction is already there. So in today's sessions, we'll be covering on basics of EMI/EMC. How are we performing the tests in EMI/EMC? And we'll also be looking how do we mark CE marking. And last, we'll be having a question answer sessions where you can pick up the topic and ask any questions required. If I'll be able to answer most of your questions if time permits. If time does not permit, you are free to pose the question to Rashmi. She will forward it to me, where I can answer them over a mail. So just an introduction to TU Rhineland. Our headquarters is in Cologne, in Germany, and our Asian headquarters is in Japan. We are 100% subsidiary, so we have got and situated headquarters being in Bangalore. We have got regional offices all over India. So regarding the laboratory wise, we have got safety medical AMMC laboratories in many places. So if you say about EMIMC laboratories, we have got in Bangalore, Visakhapatnam, Pune, and Gurgaon. So we are TÜV Rheinland is associated companies with more than 400 locations in more than 61 countries around the world. So regarding TÜV Rheinland, whatever services we provide is industrial services, mobility, products, life care, training and consultancies, systems. EMMC and safety, the testing what we are working for falls under the business stream of products. In products, you will have electrical and electronic services, mechanical machineries, testing and certification of those instruments, medical services, EMC and telecommunication services, ergonomics, and chemical services. We can support from India globally for different part of the world. The few of the tests which can be performed in India will be performed. There are few in-country testings for China, Korea, and all. We can support from India where the projects can be started from India. We'll support in getting all the details from our counterpart, and the testings can be performed over there. Good. Now coming to EMMC tests. Basically, we need to understand what is EMI and EMC. As the definition says, EMI is electromagnetic interference, and EMC is electromagnetic compatibility or immunity. So I'll not take much of the time because I have got only 1.5 hours to complete this session. So most of my slides are in detail. This I have forwarded to Rashmi. She can share you on the presentation on later stage. I'll go very quickly so that most of the time can be allocated for question answer sessions. So I'll take a bit of time to make to explain about EMI and EMC. This EMI is nothing but the interference which is being caused by any electronics in the field. So this interference can be radiated or conducted. So basically, it is to be that the product which is there in the field should not disturb or interfere into the performance of other products. So this is what a basic ideology of EMI. Similarly, EMC is it is the product which is there in the uh, shop floor or in the laboratory. It should not get affected by any of the electromagnetic interference from the subsidiary products, or it can be from any other source of it can be machineries, lot of things which are around. So it is that it should not get disturbed by its performance. So these are the basics uh, units which are being used in EMMC. So usually in EMMC you have got a source. The potential source, it can be anything, because in electronic device it can be a potential source. The phenomena can be the man-made or a machine-made phenomena can be there, or it can also be there the natural phenomena because of the lighting or the static discharges or any other part. I'll just walk through few of the things like these are basically when you say for EMMC. One second, let me take out the pointer. There are three elements in EMIMC. One is the source, the coupling path, and the victim. The source can be anything, like it can be a lighting, natural phenomena, or from the RF transmitter, or it in the high-speed data transmission, or an electrical motor. All these are the sources of the noise which are getting emitted. Similarly, the coupling path can be cables or an antenna or through ground. The victims can be RF receivers, circuits, telephones, etc. and etc. So, just a few of the examples. When this is some of us are working on a system, and most of us are working from work from home, where the even computers are been laptops have been connected to the network power supply inside. See, in same power supply, the mixers have been used, grinders have been used, blenders have been used, TVs, refrigerators are also connected. So the noise which is being radiated by a laptop or a PC to the TV or some other source, it is a radiated noise. So when we are connected to the power line, this is the conducted noise. So it can be vice versa. The noise which is generated from the TV can also interfere into the performance of the laptops which you have connected, or the laptops or the PCs which you are connected can also interfere the noise to the TV. So here, if we consider the TV as a victim, then the source will be the laptop what we have. This is a radiated noise what we are speaking about, where the antenna and the spacecraft both are source and the victim. So the noise which is being power RF noise which is being generated by this antenna can affect the performance of the aircraft. Similarly, the this is when the human are we are connected to the human for ECG or ECG recorder. If something malfunctions happens in the ECG recorder or patient monitor, that can be affected. To if the radiator patient monitor is affected, then the measurement which is been happening, then that will get affected. So the human can get we may get wrong results on it. So just if in a standard there are, if you come for electromagnetic interference, it is divided into two different groups, like group 1 and group 2. Group 1 is basically for all products which are we use in natural daily life. Group 2 are the products which are intentionally radiated noise frequencies are generated for its functionality. It can be a electromagnetic radiation inductively or capacitive coupling. So we are also having two classes in electromagnetic interference, that is class A and the class B. Basically, this class A product is used in all the establishment other than those connected to the directly connected low voltage power supplies. Whereas class B, it is used in a domestic establishment, like in your houses, any product which you are using in your residence has to be certified for class B limits. Whereas the products used in industries, they can be certified for class B or class A limits. So coming to the conducted emission, the conducted emission is usually the noise which is there in the product. We at the laboratory, they need to identify what noise is being passed on back to the power supply. To look into this, the laboratory performs a testing. If you see the block diagram over here, the line impedance LISN is a line impedance stabilization network through which the power main supply is being passed on to it. The noise, the UT will be connected through the line impedance stabilization network. Here we get a clean power from the mains, so that the noise whichever is present in the power mains, we get filtered before entering into the EUT. EUT is an equipment under test. So the noise which is being produced by electrical EUT will be captured in our receiver through this LIS. So basically, this conducted emission is being performed for the frequency range from 150 kilohertz to 30 megahertz. There are different standards which perform the conducted emission from the lower frequencies from 9 kilohertz also. So basically here what we measure is peak, quasi-peak and average. These are the three units which have been measured. So the testing can be performed in a shielded room as well as an open test site. The measurement methods are voltage method and also capacitive coupling method, current probe method. This is a basic graph which you get on a conducted emission for the frequency range from 150 kilohertz to 30 megahertz. The red color one, what you see over here is a limit line defined for class A and class B limits. So this is a extract from the standard which defines what are the limits for which product it is being there. For example, if you see for quasi-peak, for the frequency range 150 kilohertz to 50 megahertz, it is 79, and for quasi-peak and average it is 66. Going forward for 0.5 to 5 megahertz, 73, 5 to 30, 73 megahertz. This is how the different limits for class A and class B are defined for group 1 as well as for group 2 products. Coming for radiated emission testing. This radiated emission usually is performed in an semi-anechoic chamber or anechoic chamber. Here, what do we measure is the radiated noise coming from the product. This radiated noise, we see how it gets coupled to other devices. Different standard gives different limits, so that the noise which is being generated by that product should be well between below that limits. This noise is basically caused because of the switching voltages into the system, the relays or the motors. So all this stuff. So the test laboratory basically they measures this noise and they reports to the facility, to the manufacturers or the thing, where they can see whether the emissions are above the limits or below the limits. So radiated emission usually it has been performed for European market basically from 30 megahertz to uh, 6 gigahertz. When you go for US market, it has been performed up to 40 gigahertz depending on internal frequency of the product. So usually the testing being performed at 10-meter distance and 3-meter distance. Vertical, this testing how it has been performed is you see the white color one is a turntable which rotates from 0 to 360 degrees, and we have an antenna mast which varies from 1 to 4 meters. So the emissions are captured in all the angles and all the heights of the product. Even here we measure peak, quasi-peak and average data. This is a typical graph what we get. The red colored one, as we have said, it is for limits which has been defined. These are the limits for class A and class B products for group 1 and group A. 30 to 230 megahertz, 40, and 230 to 1 is 47 dB microvolts per meter. Coming for radiated susceptibility, this is electromagnetic compactability. Here we see how the product is compatible to the electromagnetic noise created by the different products. Here it can also be that few of us, when we carry a mobile phone also creates an electromagnetic waves. When these mobile phones are taken close to any of the products, because of the noise which is being emitted by this mobile phone should not interfere it into the performance of that product. So if at all the malfunctions, that can have a great distraction as well. So Here in the laboratory, what they do is they inject the noise on the product for a depending on the different standards. When injecting the noise, we see the performance of the unit. The performance of the unit should not deviate from the intended operation of the product. Here in radiated susceptibility, basically these are different fields which we inject: 1 volt, 3 volt, 10 volt, 30 volts, and depending upon the customer requirement, there are special levels which can be injected. Different standard defines different levels to be injected on the product. Basically what we do over here is, when I say we inject the noise, there is a carrier frequency which will be superimposed with an amplitude modulated signal. This amplitude modulated signal, modulated frequency of with amplitude modulation gets injected to the product. Here, the product is UT is kept on the table for tabletop equipments, where we'll have an antenna which radiates the noise and gets injected onto this product so that the performance can be monitored. Here in between, what you see are the absorbers which absorb the noise, which is because of the antenna polarization, there is a reflection from the ground plane. To avoid the reflection from the ground plane, these absorbers have been placed. So most of the standards nowadays, they refer to perform the test from 80 megahertz to 6 gigahertz. The standard says to minimum it should be 1 meter. Above that you can have whatever the distance you can have, because here the intention is the noise which is being generated by the antenna has to get injected to the DUT. Here the functionality of the DUT is most important. Here we have a amplitude modulated signal, continuous wave, and the pulse modulated signals are, these are the different modulation methods which are injected for radio susceptibility. Coming to an electrostatic discharge. Electrostatic discharge are, we are very much familiar with this test or this kind of scenario. This electrostatic discharge are the static charges which have been produced by a human when they are closely related to any of the synthetic material, or it can also be there when you are sitting in a car for a long time in a good fur kind of seats, or when you get up, or also when you're sitting in your cabin for a long time, as Miss Rashmi is sitting in her chair. If she gets up from his chair and try to open the cabin door, she might feel a slight spark from the metallic handle which she touches. These are the static charges which are developed over a period when you are not grounded completely. It might be because of the shoes or the slippers which you are wearing, or it can also be on the clothes which you are wearing. These static charges are, most of the time it is more critical when in a cold region. So most this static charges have to be tested for its good performance of the youth. This in static discharges, you have got contact discharge as well as air discharge. In contact discharge, again you have got two different methods. One is vertical coupling plane and horizontal coupling plane. This vertical coupling plane is, we inject the noise on a vertical plane so that the charges radiates to the product. Similarly, the, it is injected on a horizontal coupling plane where the charges radiate from the horizontal ground plane to the DUT. Here, again, the performance of the product is important. And air discharge basically is being applied on non-conductive accessible parts and also to conductive non-accessible parts. These are the different levels defined in the standard for ESD. This is the table what I was referring to. Here, this is the horizontal coupling plane, and this is the vertical coupling plane. This is the ESD gun through which the noise will be injected onto the product. So we have got different discharge networks for commercial products as well as for automotive products. The different networks for required for different sort of standards. This is the extract from the standard about the test setup, where you have got different braided resistors for testings. This is a typical waveform for electrostatic discharge. Coming to electrical fast transients, this is the running noise of 5 kilohertz or 100 kilohertz. This is been injected continuously for 60 seconds on a coupling plane, onto the power couplings or a signal lines. So here what we see is during the noise getting injected, there might be, this is a frequency related noise. This noise should not affect the performance of the DUT. Here we have got coupling because this gets affected because of the poor filtering or different inadequate technology which is being used. These are the different levels over the extracted from the standard, where from starting from 0.5 kV we need to go. The standard defines the testing should be performed from 0.5 kV up to the levels defined in the particular standard. This is for the power line, and this table is for the signal line. This basically is our pulses which are injected. When I say 5 kilohertz and 100 kilohertz noise, this is what we meant to say, what 5 kilohertz or 100 kilohertz noise. These pulses are, it is called, together is called as one burst, which is of 15 milliseconds. And when you, for 5 kilohertz, and then for 100 kilohertz, it is 0.75 milliseconds. So duration between these bursts is of 300 milliseconds. This is the pulse shape of the electrical fast transits, where the rise time and the pulse width is important, where we say 5 by 50 nanoseconds. Here, basically, this is the capacitive coupling clamp, where the signal lines are being tested. Usually, the signal lines will be passed through this capacitive coupling clamp, and the electrical fast transient generators is bonded to the ground reference plane. The standard defines that the electrical fast transient generator has to be bonded to the ground reference plane, so that the reflection from the GRP is captured during the testing. So basically, when we inject the noise, it is with respect to the GRP itself. The EUT has to be kept 10 centimeter above the ground reference plane. This is an extract from the standard as well, 61000-4-4, where it says how the DUTs, EU equipment under test, has to be kept. What should be the distance between the walls of the laboratory to the EUT or to the test generator. Coming to surge is nothing but the lightning surges what is being caused, or it can also be, it can happen because of sudden turning off or bursting of batteries or battery banks, you can say. Because of this, there will be a good amount of noise, power rushing towards your EUT. This is called as a surge. So this surge has got also is defined into different levels. This surge is of 1.2 bar 50 microseconds. Similarly, there is telecom surge as well, which is of 10 bar 700. So this surge generator, again, we have got the common mode and a differential mode. The common mode is with respect to the line to earth, and the differential mode is between line to line. Here, the phase angles for AC products, the phase angle has to be injected on a different phase like 0, 90, 180, 270, and 360 degrees. Coming to conducted susceptibility, as I had mentioned in radiated susceptibility, it is over an radiated noise through the antenna. When we come to the conducted susceptibility, it is a similar one for the frequency range from 150 kilohertz to 80 megahertz. The methodology is also similar to that, where we superimpose the amplitude modulated signal over a continuous wave. So here the signal generator and the amplifier, through this we inject the noise through the CDN. The CDN is nothing but coupling and decoupling network. Here the mains, when we are testing on the mains, the noise which is coming from the mains get filtered before going to the UT, and also when we are injecting the noise through our signal generator, it should not couple to the mains. So that's the reason why this coupling decoupling network is being used in between, and it also used to inject the noise onto the UT. So different levels being defined in the standard. This is the typical extract from the standard where you inject the noise at what particular distance it is being there. It is defined in the standard. It is for frequency range from 150 kilohertz to 80 megahertz. It can be for 3 volts, 10 volts, 6 volts ISM for ISM bands. And this modulation of 1 kilohertz or 2 hertz for medical products, basically for 2 hertz, it is being used for 80% of modulation with a step size of 1%. Coming to power frequency magnetic field. This power frequency magnetic field, this is to see the product are immune, whether the products are immune to the magnetic field around it. It is basically to see in the standard it refers to CRTs, where those are more immune to the magnetic noise. Here, this common, what we do is, it's on a power supply line of 50 hertz or 60 hertz. We simulate the magnetic field around the DUT so that the product we check the performance of the DUT when the magnetic field is around it. So there are different levels defined for electromagnetic field immunity. So this is a typical diagram where for tabletop equipment or floor standing equipment, where we inject the noise on different orientations on vertical or horizontal in X, Y, Z directions. Magnetic field coil used by different laboratories for different levels of testing. Coming to voltage dips and interruptions. Here, what we see is a sudden dip in an voltage or the fluctuations, what happens in the product, in the power lines. Because of this power supply fluctuations, how the performance of the UT gets disturbed. We need to perform those tests and understand the functionality of the UT and see whether it is within the permissible performance level defined by the manufacturer. The standard defines different levels for different durations. It has to be performed. This is about voltage interruptions, where we interrupt the noise for particular time interval. Here, the voltage dips and interruptions can be performed at different phase angles when you are performing on the AC lines for different time cycles. This is till here, it is about basics of EMI/IMC, where we cover most of the tests which are supposed to be performed when you're performing EMI/IMC test. During this EMI/IMC test, there are two methods what we see. in EMIMP, a compliance activity or a pre-compliance and development activity, what we call it. During compliance activity, the product has to be submitted to the laboratory. So laboratory defines what we, according to which standard it has to be tested. According to that standard and with that performance criteria and the limits, it has to comply to those things. The laboratory will later on provide you the test results regarding the compliance activity performed. Secondly, we have got pre-compliance or development activity where manufacturer can define what are the critical tests required for the product, or with the help of the laboratory for the design change what it has the manufacturing is doing. He can speak with the laboratory and say, over the because of the engineering judgment, the laboratory can guide the manufacturers to take up critical tests. Again, it is the manufacturer call to decide whichever test they want to perform. They can perform the test on hourly basis, where they can do n number of modifications on the product so that it meets the compliance criteria. In EMMC, over this period, what I have been seeing is, unless and until your design is good enough, where you have taken care everything in a design stage, starting from the PCB design till selection of components and mounting of components. If care is not been taken at that level itself, then it has been seen during the compliance stage, there is a huge amount of failure. And going back to redesigning phase and getting it rectified, it takes a huge time, because when you are going for redesigning, there might be a possibility you have to redesign your PCBs. So this care is very much important for compliance before you submit the product for the compliance activity. So here I conclude for EMIMC testing. If someone have any query, Rashmi, can we take the question for EMIMC over here or the last stage?
Maybe
Rashmi?
we'll take it at the last only. Yeah, so maybe we'll take it at the end only. We'll
Not
finish
an
the presentation. Yeah.
Not an issue, Rashmi, because for me the worry was, if at all people someone misses out, it should not be a problem. For me, I don't have any issues.
Okay.
Let me continue in that case.
Yeah.
Can I have a 2 minutes break so that I can take a drop of water?
Sure, sir. Sure. Meanwhile, if the audience has any question, they can write it into the chat or Q&A box. If you have any questions, whatever is covered till now, you may put your questions in the chat box.
Thank you very much for your time. So let me continue for regarding the certification. Right now, I'll be covering only for European Union, the C certification, what we call it as, complying to European Union. So the rules, let's understand what is CE marking. Here the CE marking is basically the European Union mark, the product which is to be supposed to be marketed to the European Union has to comply to the directives of European Union. So these directives is related to particular products. So it can be for AMMC or low voltage directives or medical directive or machinery directives, or it can also be for radio directive as well. So basically the CE marks look like this. The CE mark, what we have, this is a notified body CE mark. When notified body gets involved into giving a CE mark, depending on different types of products, where the notified body CE mark is mandatory, then the notified body CE marks will be the CE mark with a number. So for the CE mark, it is important. There are few basic steps which needs to be followed. We need to identify the different directives and the standards. We need to comply to the testings, preparation of technical file, declaration of conformity, and affixing CE mark. It's very simple. This declaration of conformity, it is not a laboratory dependent. This declaration of conformity is to be done by the manufacturer. The technical file has to be made by the manufacturer. The manufacturer has to declare what about the product and confirming that his product meets the requirement of the European Union. The laboratories get involved only into the step 2, where they say they perform the test and give the test reports. Then let's understand what is directive. For example, if you see if you are taking a low voltage directive, the low voltage directive says it is from for the product from 50 to 100,000 volts DC. The product which falls under between 50 to 1000 volts AC and 75 volts to 150 volts DC falls under low voltage directive. And for the machinery directives, it says if any moving parts are involved, then it has to fall under machinery directive. If their product has got active EMI components, then it should fall under EMC directive. Similarly, if the product has got any radio modules involved into it, then it should fall under radio directive. Then when we say a lot of things of the directives, then how are these directives built? Basically, there are directives is a topmost which is the required. Looking into the directive, you come for an understand about which standards you have to comply to. You go for the testing and the requirements what you have. This is a website where you get these directives. There are different directives for accessibility, chemical, blah, blah, lot of things involved into it. Energy efficiency. So here is what AMMC directive is. Electromagnetic compatibility, low voltage directive, red directive. It falls under electrical electronic engineering. And if you want to comply to medical standards, you have to refer to active implant medical devices directive or IVD directive or MDD directive. So these are the different directives which are there in the European Union. You can get these through this link which I've shared in this presentation. CE marking, information required, intended use area where it has to be used. So the Europe, yes. So then what we do, we identify the directives. Which directives, whether it falls under low voltage directive, EMC directive, ROHS, WEEE or red directive. Low voltage, then we comply to standards. Then standards, we perform tests. Then we comply to this ROHS, WEEE. Then you cover the CE marking testing portions in this. How do you affect the CE logo? This is a standard defined CE logo which has to be affixed, which should be within this not less than 5 mm. The declaration of conformity, what does it require? These are the minimum content which has to be there when you are declaring it, like name and address of the manufacturer, type of this product, which directive have we selected, are those standards harmonized, whether it's the national standards used or not, signature, date signature, about the function of the signatory. This is the basics of CE directive. And when we come for medical devices, it is bit tricky. Here we need to define the medical devices falls under which class. Class 1, class 1A, 2A, 2A, 2B, class 3. Depending on this, the notified body gets involved into testing and certification. Basically into certification, what I can say. The testing can be done in any of the testing laboratories, but the notified body CE mark, the European Union will not accept for few of the products which does not have a notified body CE mark. This notified body CE mark is not self-declaration. It has to be given by a certification body itself. Here what we do is we classify the product, we identify the essential requirements of the product, do risk analysis, all this stuff according to the standard 60601, and conformity of assessment. We do CE marking, we affect the CE marking. There are the different annexures which has to be considered during this and for CE marking. The requirement for CE marking for medical directives, there are few like what I have mentioned earlier. On a high level, if we want to define, like I said, class 1, class 2A, 2B. Class 1 is basically for low risk products, like you are using a pulse oximetry nowadays in your homes, or thermometers. Or 2A, 2B, electromagnetic devices or implants, like your ECG recorders, all this stuff. Class 3 devices, like when you say your implant, when you are implanting inside the body, like cardiovascular catheters, these things. And this has been defined in the MED direct, medical directive 2.4 part 1 version. For conformity assessment, as I showed you for normal commercial products, non-medical products. Similarly, for medical products, you can see here for class 1, class 2A, class 2B, 3, 2A, 2B, and 3. So it has been defined over here how it has to be taken care when you are affecting the CE marking, where if you are going for class 1 and 2A, you need not have a notified body CE mark. When you are going for class 2B and class 3, then the notified body CE mark comes into picture. These are for IVDs. There are different annexures, annexure 2, and for self-testing devices and other IVDs. Basically, these are the high-risk products, whereas self-testing devices and other IVDs, introverted devices, are under low-risk category. Annexure to the list for annexure to list A and list B, what I showed you in earlier slide. So what are self-testing devices? For example, which are used in home environment, device for performance evaluation, for subject to performance evaluation studies outside the own premises. So IVD products which is not covered under list A and B are under other IVD devices. So regulations for EU, the conformity assessment performed by notified body. The essential requirements specified by the directive and audited by according to 13485. Audited by 13485 is must for having a notified body CE mark. So this is what I wanted to cover within an hour. I think I have covered 10 minutes before. so that we can have a question answer session. So you can also write to me directly. This is my email ID, or you can pass on through sign as well. Rashmi, over to you now.
Yeah, thank you, sir. We are receiving a couple of questions. There are questions in the chat box, so I'll just read out one by one, and maybe you can answer the questions. Is that okay? Hello.
Yes,
Hello?
Rashmi, that should be fine. Yes, Rashmi,
Yeah,
that should be
yeah.
fine. Even let me also open this.
Yeah. So there are some interesting questions. So one of the questions is, being a startup, we don't have such high-tech equipments to test our products. Even if we design as per the standards, then how do we test for compliance in-house? What would you suggest for us?
See, you need to hire any of the laboratories, because I understand these are not so less value products equipments. They are really costlier, and you have to maintain the performance of those products, where you need to calibrate on regular intervals. So I suggest you can, once you are designed the thing, you can get in touch in any of the laboratories and perform a small pre-compliance testings, where you can go ahead and create a confidence on the product.
Okay, so you are saying before even going for the final design, at a prototype stage only, they should do some
Yes,
compliance testing, so that to get the confidence that the components which they are using, the PCB designing and everything, is in line with the certification.
yes. Nowadays, Rashmi, what I have seen, all the products, even the components, have been tested for EMNC. What is the level?
Mhm.
Like I said, surge 2 kV it has to meet means. Even the MOVs are also being tested for 2 kV, so that when they are
Okay.
used in the product, they should not get affected.
Okay. Next question is, will test parameters change for the device with Bluetooth Wi-Fi connectivity or without the one? So if there is a device with Bluetooth and Wi-Fi connectivity, is the test parameters remains the same, or they change?
Yes, because when you are having a Bluetooth or wireless, they go under red directive. They does not go under EMIMC directive. So red directive defines the different types of standards
Okay.
and test levels. So in this case, and the test methodology remains same, but functionality to monitor the performance varies. So standard to standard, the functionality varies. So for the answer,
Okay.
it is yes.
Okay, I hope this answers the question. For India class 1 device, is CE mark compulsory for Indian market?
That's the bad luck what we see over here. India has not mandated any of the notified body as of now. So that's the reason why we see non-certified products also in many of our hospitals as well. So, but as an organization, the hospitals have taken care that minimum of CE mark is mandatory for the product nowadays. So, if in earlier days, if you go, the hospitals are they used to use non-certified uh, products into the facility. So, to be
Just
brief, it is not a
okay. So in continuation with this, I just want to ask one more question. The test procedures, what you conduct to give the certification, is it same for the Indian market? If at all it is used in the Indian market and outside
yes,
India, the test
yes.
procedure remains the same?
Once you follow the standard, all the test procedure is the same. Whether you are using
Hmm.
in India market, in any other, the standard to be followed is the same.
Okay. There's one more question. I have an air pollution and virus-free device. Which category I fall?
See, again, it is depending on the air pollution, what you are doing, try to identify in this air pollution. So I'll request you just drop me that product. I will identify the category and let you know.
Okay, okay. Then the question is your Gurgaon lab do testing medical devices as per the BIS standard, including EMI, EMC? Is IS, and one more question he has posted is ISO 13485 mandatory before going for C certification?
C certification is a self-declaration depending on the class of product what you are using. Is IS 13485 is mandatory for the manufacturing industries, which complies, which requires a notified body C marking, and EIS 0 for to say that 13485 is mandatory for notified body CE mark.
Okay, and the other question was Gurgaon lab, is your Gurgaon lab do testing medical devices as per BIS standards, including EMI,
Right,
EMC?
we are in a verge of getting audited by NABL. So we have already placed an application to NABL in the Gurgaon lab. So once that is we have completed, I think we can go for a medical expedition.
Okay. Which test required for new medical device for IEC 60601?
Pardon me, can you repeat once again?
Which test required for new medical device for IEC 60601? I mean, I am not a bit clear on the question, but
see, there are
new
different
medical
tests like
device for IEC.
IEC 60601 is a medical standard. See, it depends on the if you refer to EMIMC, which is my strength, what I can say is any active medical devices should comply to IEC 60601-1-2 standards. Those for those standards has to comply to.
Okay, okay. The next question is, we have a home self-testing VR eye diagnostic device. Which category it will come under and how to get approval?
That's home.
Self-testing VR eye diagnostic. Home self-testing VR eye diagnostic device.
See, it is typically very good thing. Again, if you see, it's a diagnostic device used to that too. It can be for class 1 as well as class 2A. So if you refer to my chart which I have given, well, it can be non-certified. What is it? Non-notified body CE mark can be taken up.
Okay, okay. How much it will cost for EMI EMC testing for a class 2A medical device?
See, again, it depends on what and all modes involved into it, and what and all parameters which has to be verified into it. Because if we are speaking for medical devices, it's not only AMIMC, there is also safety testing getting involved into this. And if you have implant any wireless devices, again, RED directives will also get involved. So looking into different of integration in the product, the costs vary. It is not the standard price like for class 1, this is the price, class 2, this is the price. So
Correct.
depending
So
on the product, it varies.
Correct, correct. So it depends on the product. So exact cost and all those things. Correct. So what is the difference in test procedure for notified body CE mark and non-notified CE mark?
There is no difference in the test procedure. It is the same. Only the thing is notified body take the equal rights on the testing part, and they say and they have got when I say 13485, it is kind of an medical manufacturing audits where we audit the factory where the product is being manufactured, so that the component does not change for the component which has been tested. So legally, we are manufacturer and the notified body both get involved. They're in legal terms, so that any changes in the product has to be informed to the notified body. The testing remains same. There is no change in the testing.
Okay. And if you want to go abroad, I mean, if for international standard, it has to be notified body CE mark?
No, notified body CE mark. If you refer to the table flowchart which I have given, it
Mhm.
is important only for the particular products like to
Okay.
be and all. For those things, notified body CE mark is required.
Okay. Okay. So again, the question is on price range, but I think you have already answered. It depends on the
Product.
product and the test. Yeah. Do class 1 devices like pulse oximeter, thermometer require EMI EMC?
If you ask me, yes, it is must, because
Okay.
there are a lot of radio magnetic interference around. So because see, it is not major, because if you see pulse oximetry, if your oxygen level is dipping for 85, you can recheck once again. But it is used if it is used in hospitals. So because of this, if for example, if the oxygen level is low, then you can if rechecking also giving a cause problem means, then he's diagnosed wrongly. So here it is class A, class 1, but here the risk analysis comes into picture. Here the manufacturer has to declare his risk analysis.
Okay. Okay. Do we have a CE testing lab in Pune, Maharashtra?
Yes, we do have both three.
Okay. How often do products fail from poor PCB design versus failure from bad choice of components?
Hand to hand. Both.
Okay. Both are the equally important and equally okay. Okay. Can you share the PPT so that we can do? Yes, we will share the PPT. CE certification for class 1M device need ISO 13585 and notified body approval certification, or we can do self notification as new MDR 2020-2021 guidelines.
I will get back to you because I am not so confident on MDR right now. So I will check with my experts and get back to you, because that is not my expertise zone.
Sure, sure. So Gunjan, maybe you can write this question to or mail this question to us, and we will we'll connect you with the relevant people then.
Yes, yes. I will connect to the from Tufranland, who is the relevant person. I will connect directly to it.
Sure, sir. Thank you. What should be the budget for a startup for medical compliance?
Depending on your product.
Okay. So what is the difference between pre-compliance and compliance test? Can we go for CE certification with pre-compliance test report?
See, CE certification is self-certification, where you need to prepare your own report. Pre-compliance, when performing the pre-compliance, if you create your own test report, and that test report is part of your checklist in your declaration of DOC, then you can do the pre-compliance and get it CE certified. If you feel that the test report cannot be prepared by you, and it has to be prepared by any of the certifying laboratory or the laboratory who can authenticate the test report and take all the rights and saying that what I have tested is correct, then you cannot have that. It is again, it's up to the manufacturer for CE certification.
Oh, okay, okay. What certifications are required for active wearable compression device?
Active wearable?
Active wearable, I'm just looking at it.
Whether he's referring to active wearable watches, headphones, something like that?
I'm just checking. Rakesh, can you read out the question, please, for me?
Okay. Which one is it?
It
Okay.
was
Or Mr. Abdul, if you could look at the Q&A box and probably.
1 second, I'll do that.
if that is fine.
I'll do that. Question is from?
Wait, I just lost that question somewhere.
Do you have a low-cost testing plan for startups manufacturing home appliances? Yes, we do have. The point of consider to minimize the conduct. Where is that question? In fact,
Yeah, that's what I lost that question.
Maybe I
we
got it.
Can I read the
Gunjan
question?
P.
If it-
Gunjan P. Class A variable sensors device. EMC compliance to follow for Indian C. Is this the one? Yeah, sir, you can read. You can read. Sorry, I missed it.
What certification are required for active variable compression device for lymphedema?
Sir, your name so that I can look into the QA.
Zainab Rangwala.
Zainab Rama, what certifications are required?
now I got it.
Active variable compression device for Zainab. Sorry, over here again. I'll get back to you for this also.
So next question is, I think, Gunjan, class A variable sensor device IC EMC compliances to follow for Indian and C class 1M category. Maybe we can go one by one in the Q&A session, sir. Q&A box.
Yes. Class A variable sensor devices, IC, EMC compliance to follow for Indian and C. Right now, Gunjan, for class A or class B, any of the variable devices, there is no mandatory requirement for India. India is coming up with an TEC certification where the product is getting connected to the network, telecom networks, where smartwatches is also being considered into this. So, but still phase 3 is not up yet. Phase 2 is going on for TEC. If phase 3 is there, then definitely smartwatches will come into picture. Apart from that, for European Union, yes, we have to comply to RED directive. So coming to Mr. Dinesh Verma's question, we have
this one we have already taken.
Yes.
Some of them we have already taken. Okay, let me go down now.
This is also done.
Does TUV have? Does TUV have any low-cost testing plans for startups manufacturing home appliances?
Basically, it is not there, but definitely we can work on it. Because for us, there is no low cost nor high cost companies. We can definitely look into the small scale or large scale industries, and we can be looked into it. Definitely can be looked into it.
Does a 4-layer PCB perform better than a 2-layer PCB in terms of EMI? Is there anything specific with 2-layer and 4-layer PCBs?
In fact, 4-layer PCB performs pretty better because there you will segregate all your signal lines, power lines, grounding separately. In your 2-layer PCB, sometimes the power lines or signal lines get crossed each other. So when these things happen, then definitely I suggest 4 layers is better. But even in 4 layers, if your PCB design is not so good and power line, signal lines are crossing each other, means still 4-layer will also not be so good for you.
Okay. If we opt to outsource manufacturing, do we still need to have ISO 13485?
13485. See, if you are outsourcing the manufacturing, but the assembling is being done with you, and you are taking the ownership of the product, then if you are not taking the ownership, only the assembling part is yours, then 13485 is again you have to do the system certification will be done for you. And what
Okay.
are the documents? Depending on that, whether that manufacturing unit will be audited or not, will be taken. Call will be taken on that.
Okay. One more question is, for a product like Baby Radiant Warmer, what will be the approximate cost for CE certification? I think participants should note that the cost will depend on the actual product and other things. So it will be better if you can connect with them directly and talk about your product, give more details, and understand what will be the cost in this. Best or list of books for EMI EMC certification for medical class 1 device. So are there any books for EMI EMC certification for medical class 1 device?
There are many foreign authors which they have written on medical devices, but many you can, if you start naming, there'll be a lot. In fact, even I have not gone through so many books, and there are there in the library definitely.
Okay.
There are many books.
Okay, maybe if you can share the list of the books with us on email, and then we will
I can do that one. I can do that one.
Yeah, sure. We are developing a medical device, and as far as we know, it should comply with IC 60601 regulations. My question is what are the things to be apart from EMI EMC? You already explained. So if for this specific device, which should comply, the what he is saying is a medical device, it should comply whatever they are developing with this regulations. And apart from this EMI EMC, what you have explained, is there anything else that they should take care of?
No, I have covered everything, like for ROHS, WEEE, CE certificate, like for safety, wireless, and EMC. If they cover everything, then you have complied to all the directives and the standards.
Okay, okay. There's one more question. Is there any selection criteria for MEC materials based on EMI EMC? So mechanical material, whatever they are selecting for their product, is there any selection criteria for EMI EMC?
Mechanical material based on, there is no selection criteria. Basically, when you make an enclosure, basically you take this mechanical material for an enclosure. So the enclosure be in such a way that the noise which is being created by the PCBs or the component inside should not leak outside. See, even the best one is the copper. Then copper is still costly. Then you can take anything. You can take any material. If you get copper coated pending, that will become like copper itself. So it is again designed how you design your mechanical box.
Okay.
Material does not matter.
Okay, okay. So the design of the box will matter more than the material, and if you have this copper with that will be better. Okay. Design considerations for sheet metal electronic enclosure for EMI EMC safe. So I think it's again in continuation with what you have answered. Any standards we can refer for design considerations?
Designing of EMMC.
Yeah, so design of sheet metal electronic enclosure. They want to have the sheet metal electronic enclosure for the product, and they're asking if there is any design consideration they need to think about.
You have to refer to the basic designing of EMMC, where there is an reference for what is about filtering, what is shielding, all this mechanism is been given. So if you refer to that kind of books, you'll get all this stuff. Basic designing on EMMC will support you on these things.
So there will be guidelines available for basic designing of this with using the sheet metal and all those things, any material rather.
Yes.
Okay. Which countries demand TP from smartwatches?
Sorry, I'm not aware of this.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's not in the scope of this seminar also. Is air gap in is air gap in enclosure will cause EMI disturbances?
Yes, definitely. That's the reason why if you see, there are honeycombs made even for different vent for the ventilations. So even a slight air gap will also contributes in radiated disturbances.
Okay, okay. There's one more follow-up question with that. Can you explain some poor design examples which are prone to have EMI disturbances? Typically, what to do and what not to do?
I will give a typical examples what I have faced in my testing part. There was an mixer. Usually, we might have seen mixers. They don't come with EMI filters.
Okay.
EMI filter basically they filters the noise which gets entered into the power supply. So because of the low design, now they had not for the low cost they had not put the filter into it. When we tested the conducted emission, there was a huge failure. So now they cannot add the separate filter to the mixer. What they did, the design change is the power connector, usually what they take, they got the filter inbuilt in that power connector so that the noise which is been coming from the mixer gets filtered out. Similarly for refrigerator as well, you can say. And the typical case, one more thing, doing radiated emission, it was really time consuming thing for me to also to understand. I spent a lot of time to understand what was the issue. Only the issue was after rework, my customer, he just while taking out the component and fixing the other, he just left one small spike. When you solder it, you get a small spike. They left it as it is. That small spike was acting as an antenna and radiating. So we have to make sure that when we are doing rework on any of the PCB designs, it should be clean so that it should not affect the performance of the unit.
Okay, okay, got it. For our product BLE module is FCC certified.
Then
Is
also we need to
FCC, then
go.
also we need to go for Bluetooth EMI EMC testing.
For US, no. For Europe, yes.
Okay, okay. Which certificate have you mentioned for smartwatches?
Smartwatches, you have to test according to RED directive.
Okay. I wanted to clarify the difference between pre-compliance and compliance testing. Is it called pre-compliance when it is partially complete?
Pre-compliance is performing before the compliance activity, where you take up these slots on an hourly basis and you debug the issues on the failure. It can be a partial or full round of testings as well.
Okay. So if people are asking your contact details, we'll share in the chat box. For bone conduction hearing aid, does it come under class 2A or class 2B?
Because of the latest improvement in MDD, it is getting because MDD, I have not, as I told you, I am not familiar yet about MDD.
Okay.
So let me connect back to the team.
Sure, sure. So there are some questions in the chat box also, I believe. Some of them they are, yeah. Who is the authority of providing CE marks? Is it obtained through application or fulfilling the different criteria? Automatically is CE complied. Who is the authority that?
It is a self-declaration. CE mark is a self-declaration. There is no authority required for it, unless and until it is a notified body. CE mark. Notified body CE
Oh.
mark, they will be in contact with the European Union, and they are the representative of European Union to provide the notified body CE mark. They are registered under notified European Union. So that's the reason why you get number along with the CE mark.
Okay. Are there any more questions? Am I, Aditya, can you see any other questions there which I missed?
What is the medical device using a product from different manufacturers, which is not certified, but it is crucial for our device? A medical device is using product from different manufacturers. In that case, you need to get it certified for according to the medical directive itself.
Product from, okay. Any other question, audience? If you have, you may type in Q&A box. Anyone wants to ask question
For
or
testing the entire product with accessory or the PCB is used for testing the entire product with accessory. See, basically, when
yes,
you are
there's one
performing
more.
yeah, basically when you're performing a pre-compliance activity, it is better to have a product which is complete. It's a prototype which you can bring into the good complete shape. You can have with a mechanical components as well, but again at the final stage before you submit for the compliance activity, you should be completely enclosed, because as you are submitting into the market, if it is there, then you need not retest once again. So the compliance activity gets, because it is almost many times it has been seen that once you submit the product for compliance, you will have the target date to the market. So there, if it starts failing, you will miss the target date to the market. So the prototype itself has to be close to the product which has to be exported to the market. Can we have multiple tests for eMMC after design upgradation, or the costing will be separate for each new test? Yes, because these tests are time dependent. So depending on the test, the costing will also vary. And definitely as an laboratory, we can tell you which test has to be repeated or which should not be repeated.
Oh. So I have also one question. What will be the tentative timeline for this test? Like when the startup should approach you, and once they approach you, how much time generally it takes? I understand that
Usually, yeah, Rashmi, usually what we do is we share the questionnaire to any of the customers. They have to fill up the questionnaire, giving the detail of the type of the product, the size of the product, the voltage, what they are using it, the current of it, and what is the internal frequency of the product, what are the interfaces, what is the functionality of the product. When they give us these details, we tell them these are the relevant standards for your product. Do you want to comply to these standards, or you already have an idea to which standard you're supposed to comply?
Okay.
So if the manufacturer says yes, we will comply to these standards, then we will share them the costings. So usually what happens, again, if depends, for example, if you are taking only enclosure related testing, the enclosure related testings will get over within 1 or 2 days, because you need to do only RE, RS, ESD and PSMS, only 4 tests. So when you are doing a power related testing, again this power related testings comes into picture, means how many voltages that is there, whether it's universal voltage adapter you are using, then according to which standard are going to perform, what does the standard say, what are the interfaces which are there, these interfaces, what is the length of the interfaces, whether this is an indoor interface cable or outdoor interface cable. When this comes into picture, the times gets extended. Usually the testing time takes 1 week.
Okay, okay, okay. And what if the startup is not able to, suppose if there are 4 to 5 tests to be conducted for that particular product and they only get success in say 2-3 tests, and then they have to do some modification for remaining couple of tests. When they come back with those modification, do they need to conduct the tests again, or these 3 tests which they have passed, they stand for?
See, Rashmi, basically, according to the laws of compliance activity, once the sample is submitted, whether it's pass or fail, we complete all the tests and give. But
Okay.
we, as in India, what we do is, we know we cannot afford to repeat
Right.
all the tests for the failures.
Correct,
So
correct.
what we in India, what we do is, we perform the test. If there is a failure, we inform the customer this is a failure. Do you want us to continue the test or stop in between? So when we stop the test, they will come with the modification. Looking into the modification, we will tell them no, these tests are not required because this test will not impact the earlier tests.
Okay, okay. So it's basically,
Any modification which impacts the earlier test has to be repeated.
okay. So it depends on case to case basis and product, whether the test needs to be repeated or not. Yeah. One more question we have received. Can we get FDA with acknowledge of CE mark? So if they are having CE marking, can they get FDA approval?
The standards are same when you apply to the FDA, but we need to apply to this FDA authority. You cannot have it directly with the CE mark.
Okay, okay, okay. Got it, got it. I think we have covered all the questions. Yeah, list of books which they want, and yeah, I think we have covered all the questions and almost we have come to closure of the session. I appreciate your time and expertise, and thank you so much. Thank you so much for guiding our innovators and such details. I am sure they might have got insights and understanding of what they need to do and what not. So thank you once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Yeah. So
thank you, everyone. Thanks for your time.
thank you, sir. Thank you so much. So audience, this is our next session. You can see on the screen, this will be the next, this is on next Friday, 4 o'clock, same time, under this Power Hour with Sign Biotech series. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. Have a nice weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye.